Hi, this is GATSBY Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is absolutely the opposite of what we've come to know in Chapter 1. It's presented to introduce the underside, the dark side of the American dream, and the things that are wrong with the Jazz Age. We open with a description of the Valley of Ashes, and it's quite literally a Valley of Ashes, with a gruesome image of a fantastic farm where ashes grow like wheat into ridges and hills and grotesque gardens. And this grotesquerie is continued with the descriptions of the line of grey cars crawling along an invisible track, ghastly creek, the ash-grey men with leaden spades who stir up an impenetrable cloud which screens their obscure operations. It's a kind of an underworld where you can't really see things properly. There's a grey land, and above it there's this really eerie image of a long neglected advertisement for an oculist. We would call it an optometrist, who is Dr. T.J. Eckelberg, and that is translated literally from the German, basically means foul town. He's looking over the place in this gigantic and horrendous way, but it's a billboard that has no face, no eye, a non-existent nose. There are gaps in it, and that's a really disconcerting thing. This absence, these holes, the gaping holes in the advertisement symbolise the holes in the fabric of society. Tom and Nick are on a train going into New York, and when they stop in this place, this Valley of Ashes, Tom is going to, he insists that they get off the train, and they go to this garage which is owned by Wilson, and Wilson is somebody who Tom is using basically as a cover. He's having an affair with Wilson's wife, Myrtle, but he has as a pretext he does business with Wilson. The interior is unprosperous and bare. The only car visible was a dust-covered wreck. So the images that that Fitzgerald is giving us are piling up to show us the things that are absolutely opposite to this wonderful, dazzling party world that we've been introduced to already. Wilson himself is a spiritless, anemic, faintly handsome. A damp gleam of hope sprang into his eyes. So everything here is, it's dead. It's an underworld. It's like a graveyard. It's where the people who did not succeed at the American dream have sunk to. Tom invents a pretext to speak to Wilson's wife, and she is described as in her middle 30s and faintly stout. She carries her flesh sensuously, and she has an air of vitality about her, as if the nerves of her body were continually smouldering. So she's a sexy woman. She's a Earth Mother type. She's big, she's blousy. Contrast this to Daisy. This gets this idea of chiasmus, where there's a pair, and Tom's got the beautiful ethereal princess wife, and he's also got this rather more Earth Mother kind of good time gal who he is seeing on the side. He finds a way to talk to Myrtle, and he says that I want to see you, and she makes up a pretext. She says that she's going to the city in order to visit her sister, which is her cover. And she says really insultingly about poor George that he's so dumb he doesn't know he's alive. Sorry, Tom's the one that says that. He's so dumb he doesn't know he's alive. When they get to New York, Myrtle kind of adopts a whole new personality, and she starts showing what a social climber she is. She's thoroughly reveling in being Tom's mistress. She wants magazines. She makes them stop and buy a puppy. She's ecstatic. We've seen that word used in relation to Daisy already. And what she's doing is trying to she's advancing herself. And by being Tom's girlfriend, he's such a wealthy, well-to-do man that by association, she is bettering herself by having an affair with him. They go to an apartment which Tom keeps in order expressly to have somewhere for them to go. And when they get in there, the cab stops, and Mrs. Wilson throws a regal glance around the neighbourhood, a regal homecoming glance around the neighbourhood. So she's telling us this idea that she's on the way up and that this area, which is at 158th Street in the West Hundreds, is a place where she feels at home. So she's on the way out of the Valley of Ashes as far as she's concerned. When they get into the apartment, it's full of some significant symbols of opulence. It has a small bedroom and a bath, and the living room is crowded with a set of tapestried furniture entirely too large for it. So it's grand, it's too big for itself. And it has tapestries which are scenes of ladies swinging in the gardens of Versailles. Now, this is pretentious. Versailles is the palace where the French kings lived. They all came to a very sticky end indeed. There was a revolution and those kings were overturned. We could be saying that, Fitzgerald could be saying that the rough and tumble, up and coming class of people like Gatsby are going to overturn the American royalty represented by Tom. Anyway, the point is really that it's really quite glamorous. And notice that it's furnished with copies of magazines. They're ladies' magazines, Town Tattle, and it's showing that she's a pretentious sort of a woman. Mrs. Wilson changes her clothes as she walks around the place. Her bracelets jingle. Again, we can see this as an example of synecdoche or disembodiment. She is known by the items she wears rather than by the nature of her character. And they get a party going, they get people over, they all have too much to drink. And as the afternoon goes on, we see Myrtle being revealed in a rather less attractive character. She has a high, mincing shout. She tells her sister, "Most of these fellas will cheat you every time. All they think of is money. I had a woman up here last week to look at my feet." So she's showing off the fact that she can get a podiatrist to come to the house and make her feel like a queen for an hour or so. And her status is what's really important here, and that's what's going on. We also see Myrtle ordering the boy about the ice around, kissing the dog with ecstasy, and sweeping into the kitchen, implying that a dozen chefs awaited her orders there. She is frankly play acting, and her sister, confides to Nick that they're both can't stand the people that they're married to. Nick is pretty sure that that is not the case, and he has a much more realistic reading of the whole situation. The afternoon wears on with everybody getting drunk, and it's pretty tawdry. Myrtle gets pissed and starts talking about Daisy, and Tom is absolutely incensed. He doesn't even say anything, but making a short, deft movement, Tom Buchanan broke her nose with his open hand. Now, this is startling. This violence is very unexpected, and it shows really how violent, what a coercive and unpleasant character Tom is. It's also hinting at a wider truth, which is that this good time society that these people are living in is actually based on a ground of a lot of violence, illegality, immorality, people who are living on the wrong side of the law. Nick's been trying to leave and he hasn't been able to do it. He says that every time he tries to get out, he finds himself entangled in some wild, strident argument which pulled me back as if with ropes into my chair. That is Nick confessing his fascination with this place. And he says, "I was within and without, simultaneously enchanted and repelled by the inexhaustible variety of life." That's a good quote, and you should note it. It's more or less encapsulating Nick's stance on the whole of life. He is within and he is without. He is an observer, but because he is taking part as well, he is complicit in what happens. Once Tom's broken Myrtle's nose, Nick does get out, and then he has a very curious encounter. It's a heavy hint at homosexual activity. It's suggestive and written in a way which we call double entendres, so the meaning is hidden behind the words, and it's a little bit gross. But as they're going down in the elevator, there's another man there. It's Mr. McKee. He's been talking to him throughout the afternoon. And the elevator man says, "Keep your hands off the lever." And the next thing that happens is that there is an ellipsis, which is a form of punctuation. You should always look closely at the punctuation. A form of punctuation which means that something has been left out. So there's an ellipsis, and the next thing that happens is that Nick is standing by his bed, and he was sitting up between the sheets clad in his underwear. So something's happened, but for a variety of reasons, including the fact that homosexuality was illegal at the time, we aren't given any explicit details. Now, we're not given any explicit details about an awful lot of things that happen in this book, but there is definitely a homoerotic undertone in that passage, and we shouldn't avoid it. So what we've seen is a scene of debauchery, which follows on an introduction to the underbelly, the graveyard, the grey, ashen place, which is precisely midway, chiasmus, again, midway between West Egg and the city of New York, is this kind of hellhole where Myrtle comes from. And then we go into this really unpleasant, debauched, hysterical people who are on the make, who are not genteel, who are not educated, who are not classy in any way. And Tom reveals the violence that he is capable of. So we've got to ask the question, what about this dazzling life? Is it really, in fact, a very, very bad life?